Right. This is going to be a dedicated video on the disassembly and the reassembly of the hammer unit inside of the Action Army AAP-01 pistol. So this is the lower frame of that said pistol. If you do not know how to remove this whole assembly from the lower receiver, grip, frame, whatever you want to call it, if you don't know how to do that, go watch my previous video where I go over the basic disassembly of the entire lower of the gun. The video code on that is T001. So if you don't know how to get this out, go watch that video first. Otherwise, if you already know how to get this out, or if you kind of figured it out on your own, but you don't know how to put it back together, this will be the video for you, all right? This is a supplementary video. In my previous video, I go over how to take this out of the gun and how to disassemble this. This is just a dedicated video where I only am taking apart this piece, all right? So now that I am done with all that talking there, the only tool that you need for this disassembly is going to be a punch tool. I am going to be using just an Allen wrench. This is a 2mm Allen wrench. This is the only tool that you need to disassemble the whole lower. So all the screws that you take out on the lower are all 2mm. So this is kind of just my AAP-01 tool that I keep around. All right. So the first thing you need to do is there is a spring that is inside there. So if you have it like this, you turn it to the side. There's a spring in there. It is hooked on to a silver piece back there. That silver piece is basically going to be your firing pin for the gun. The first thing you need to do when disassembling this is you need to unhook it from that. So what I do is I pull back on the hammer, so I go back this way, and then I push in on the firing pin here. So I'm going to pull back, and I'm going to push forwards on the firing pin there, and it'll get it a little bit easier for me to pull it out, so it kind of pushes it upwards a little bit easier. I am going to use, for this video, I'm going to use a like a pin, a hook tool, some sort of thing like that. You can do it with your fingers, but I'm going to use a tool for this video. So basically, you just got to pop it up, and it will pop up here, and then you're good there. So it's all set. Make sure you do not overbend this. This is a spring. If you overbend it, the spring is going to be done. You're going to have to go buy a whole new spring, and normally it's going to be like a whole spring kit. So it's going to be a little bit of money if you do mess up the spring, all right? So make sure you're very careful. All right, so now that that is gone, you can take out the pin. And so there's a pin that is right there. That pin is the pin that holds in the spring that you just unlatched, and also another piece in there. So you're going to grab your punch again. It's not going to be super difficult. You might even be able to just push it straight out. There should be almost no resistance. So you're going to pull that out. I'm going to put that off to the side. So I try to keep everything sorted. And for this video, I'm going to have it all in order of taking it out and putting it back in. All right. So that piece is out. The next piece is going to be your spring, which is like this. We're going to set that off to the side again. And then after that, you have one more piece. And this piece, it's easier if you just turn it over. You turn it upside down. It'll fall right out. And there you have it. That's the last piece in that portion. All right. I'm going to set that off to the side as well. Now we're going to work on the hammer. So to get the hammer out, this pin goes out forwards. So it goes out pointing towards you, the camera here. So we are going to flip it over, and we're going to push it out. So shouldn't be too much resistance again. This one is going to have a little bit of resistance though, because there is a spring that is holding on to this guy. So you kind of push this out a little bit, and then you can grab it with your hands to pull it out the rest of the way here. So I'm going to do that, and while I do that, I'm going to hold on to the hammer part just so it doesn't fall out, all right? So I kind of pull it out, and then we have the pin, and then the whole hammer piece is going to kind of fall out a little bit. I'm going to set this right here so that way I can put this pin to the side, and everything's going to be in order over here for your viewing. This pin is the pin that has a little cap on the end, basically. So this one only goes in one direction. Right. So we are going to finish taking this thing apart here. So this spring is on the hammer. I'll show you how that sits on the hammer here in a second. And then there's also this heart-shaped piece of metal, so you can just pull that out. And now that whole piece is all disassembled. So I'll put that all over here off to the side. And now there's one more piece that falls out. It's your firing pin piece. So we're also going to set that off to the side. That's going to go right there. Now there's only one more component in here. It's this piece right here. There's a little bit of spring tension, and this pin only comes out one way. So again, it's if the hammer unit is facing this direction, it's going to come out towards you, the viewer, or the camera. So we're going to flip it over, and there's a spring, so we need to be careful we don't lose that spring. So we're just going to push it out, and immediately you're going to feel that it unlatches because the spring is it's a spring, so it has a little bit of power there. But we're going to pop everything out, and there we have it. So now we have these two pieces right there. We're going to set those off to the side. All right, so now we have everything disassembled. There is not a single other piece that's on here. This whole thing is one cast piece of metal, all right? So over here we have the whole lineup of all the pieces that we took out. So there you have that. And the order we're putting it back in is basically the same exact order that we put it, that we took it out. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to grab these two pieces that we just took out. So we're going to grab those. And basically, the way that these are going to work is if you look closely and you see how my spring and my little piece here are lined up, that is the exact orientation that they are going to be going in compared to each other. All right. So if you look at the spring, one side is straight and the other side is bent. The bent side is going to go over here. It's going to hook into that the little canyon right there in that piece. And the straight piece is going to be poking straight out that way. And you want the arm that's on top is going to be the one that is pointing that direction over there, all right? So we're going to put that guy on there. It's normally easier if I don't have it laying out in my hand, so I will do that here real quick for you. All right, so now I have it like that, all right? So it's the same orientation that I just showed you. You basically you're going to translate it over to the, you're going to translate the pieces together, all right? Now we're going to put it back in here. So we want to get our pin ready. Again, this is the last pin that we just took out. So you get that guy ready right over there. I'm going to put that spring back on. All right. Now, putting it into here, it's only going to fit one way, so you're not going to be able to accidentally put it in the wrong way, all right? But basically, the spring is going to be pointing towards the camera, all right? It's going to be on that side of it, and the whole unit's going to be in this orientation when we put this in, all right? And the pin is going to come in from the other side when we put the pin in, so just keep that in mind. So when we put this in, we're going to make sure we catch the spring. The spring's just going to catch right there. Basically, the only place it's going to be able to catch. So you're not going to have to worry about putting the spring in wrong. I'm going to set it down, set it into that spot there. And you might need to do this a couple times to get it to be lined up correctly, because it is a very tiny piece, especially if you have not a lot of dexterity or larger fingers. Is going to be a bit of a pain, but there we go. I have it set in there, and that is just temporarily set in there. So now we need to put the pin through, so that comes back through the back side. So we're going to drop that guy in there, and we're going to make sure everything's all lined up, and we should be able to push that pin right through. There shouldn't be any resistance. You might want to take your Allen wrench to get through the last bit of the way, but there should not be any resistance when you put it in. If there is resistance, you're going to want to just take the piece apart and try it again, right? There should be zero resistance when you put that piece in. So now we have that in the gun. So that part is all set. So now the next piece is going to be the firing pin piece. So it looks like this. It's the little triangle piece. And when you put it in the gun, it is going to be facing in this orientation relative to the big chunk here, all right? So you have the, basically the triangle's going to be pointing that way, and then you have the little pin sticking out on the bottom. So that's going to fall right into, there's a little slot on the bottom of this. It's going to fall into that slot. And you just got to get lined up in there. This part isn't too tricky. You just have to get it set in. If I can get it set in there, there we go. And it just kind of rests loosely in there. So now we're going to set that down, because we're not going to touch that for a second, all right? So now we have the hammer pieces. So the first piece, this heart-shaped piece, it's going to go through that hole, so the one that doesn't have this big ring sticking out. So it goes through that hole right there. And I will let you know, the easiest part to break on the entire gun is this piece that is sticking up. So the piece that's next to that hole that is sticking up, that is the easiest piece to break on this gun. So we're going to put the heart-shaped piece on there, and that's just going to be loose on there. And then now we're going to put in the spring. So the spring, when I first was doing this, I had a hard time. None of the videos I watched really showed the orientation of the spring. So the way that you do this is the spring is going to sit basically like this. So the little arm is going to be pointing straight at the heart, right? And then the big arm is going to be pointing downwards. So you're going to set that right on top of there. So you have the little arm pointing towards the heart, and the big arm is pointing down, all right? So I don't know if you can see that very well, but that's what's going on. And now you're going to drop it into the whole chunk here. So the arm that's sticking out, that is going to latch on to part of this chunk. So it's going to latch on right there. I don't know if you can see, there's a little bit of wear there where the paint is, at least on mine. That is where it goes. So it sits here on the outside on this ledge here. That's where that spring is going to latch onto. So when we put the spring in, we're going to make sure that it latches on there. We're going to put this, we're going to put the hammer in from the top here. So you have this L that's pointing over to the right. It's pointing over to the right. You're going to put it in from this side, and you're going to make sure that spring is going to latch on to that little ledge there. So however you want to do it, you want to make sure that that spring is there, all right? So now we're going to very carefully push the hammer down. So let me get this stuff lined up a little bit here. So basically, the hammer needs to be pushed down that way, okay? So we're going to get the pin ready, because this pin is going to be our savior here. This part feels like it needs 3 hands. It's very difficult, so you basically need to push this all the way down until you can see all the way through that hole there, all right? So we're going to push everything down, and very quickly we're going to drop this pin in, because it is very difficult, but you just drop it right in. It's going to go in super duper easy as soon as you get lined up. If it doesn't go all the way in at first, that's okay, as long as it goes in a little bit, enough to catch onto the hammer piece, and then you can just readjust it if you need to. And now that I'm looking at it, it looks like the reason that my pin went in so quick is because this piece got out of place, right? So you need to make sure that this piece is still in there. If this piece falls out, you need to go ahead and redo this step. So I'm going to redo this step here for you. Let me grab my punch. Again, we're going to punch it out. Then normally you can pull it out. In this case, it's not going to want to go because that piece is missing, so force it out a little bit. But there we go. So it's out now. So we're going to try that one more time. So again, line it all up perfectly. I get it all kind of set up and ready to go. And again, same way. You might have done this first try. This might take you many tries. This is the hardest part of this whole assembly, is just doing this. So we're going to get that guy kind of staged and make sure that everything's all in there. And then we're going to just push everything down. I'm going to use my workbench here. It's going to be a little bit easier for me. I'm going to push it down. Going to try to push everything all down. Get all lined up. Make sure that I'm not losing the piece back here. Looking like mine is not it's not wanting to stay where it's supposed to be, but we're going to make do here. All right, so there we go. Now we got it kind of staged. So now it is just barely hanging on to that hammer piece in there, and that is perfectly fine because this allows us to go ahead and readjust everything, make sure everything's all lined up perfectly before we put the pin all the way through. Once we get it to where we think it's good, we're just going to keep pushing until it goes through. You should be able to push it through with your hands. You shouldn't need to use a punch to get the extra leverage to push it in. So just hand push it in. You're good to go there. All right, so you can make sure it's in good. If the hammer is going to be able to, if it has spring tension going back that way where the heart is pointing, you're good there. You did a good job inside of there. All right. So now we're on to the last part. This is the home stretch. This part is very simple. So it's going to be these three pieces. The first part is going to be this piece. So this piece has a little bar that's going horizontal right now on the camera. That part is going to be pointing off to the right here. So if we have it the big chunk like this, okay, we're turn it sideways like this, and we just drop this piece right in there. It's going to drop into place super easily. And it's going to latch onto the ledge that is right on there. You'll see it if you don't see it in camera. You'll see it in person. It'll latch on right there. And then you're going to grab your pin, and you're going to put that in halfway. So basically, you're going to only put it in as far as it'll go with that piece you just put in. Now you got the spring. So the spring has a 90-degree bend on the top part, right? And then it has a straight part as well on the bottom. The straight part there is going to basically just rest on top of the piece that you just put in. So you just set it down in there, inside of there, and then you're going to push the pin all the way through. So push it all the way through. And then now the last part is you need to latch the spring back on to the firing pin in there. So to do that, I pull back on the hammer a little bit, and then I push in on the firing pin there. So I pull back on the hammer, I push in on the firing pin, and I pull it up, and I use my fingers. I have an easier time with fingers, and at this point it is all loose, so make sure that you put your pin back in if it falls out. I use my fingers for this. You can use a hook tool or a pin or some sort of thing to help you guide it in, but I just use my fingers. You latch it onto that silver loop that you can see in there, And you very carefully, because if you overbend the spring, it's not going to work as well as it's supposed to. All right, after I do that, I double check my pins, make sure all my pins are all in as far as they go. And it looks like I am good here. All my pins are all flush. And there you have it. It's all good. If you want to, you can double check, make sure it works. So this part should be in tension, and you shouldn't be able to push the firing pin at all. All right. So there you have it. Whole hammer assembly disassembled and reassembled for your pleasure. All right. There you are. You are all set. Have a nice day.